Welcome everybody. This is webinar number 42 as part of the Reclaim series of webinars and now also the Green In series of webinars. Both are network sort of centers that are bringing together expertise on both external and indoor greening systems. And this is, as you can see, this is webinar number 42. So there's a little bit of an overlap between the two networks. So Green-In is a relatively new network in which I'm involved, and Reclaim is a preceding network. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sukumār Natarājan. I am Professor of Environmental Design at the University of Bath. And I'm also the director of the Center for Regenerative Design and Engineering for a Net Positive World. And if that's a mouthful, the short name for the center is Renew. And so Renew has a lot of spiritual affinity with both Green In and Reclaim, and hence my presence here today. Before we proceed, I just want to say that this thing is being recorded and it will eventually find its way onto YouTube. So just to make all of you aware of that. And for those of you who are already in the audience, if you would like to ask any questions, there's a Q&A channel at the top of Teams, which you should be able to see next to the chat button also. And if you have any questions, we will take them towards the end after both speakers have spoken, although I'm conscious that our first speaker might well be leaving a little bit earlier than we scheduled for. So with that, next slide, please, Charlotte. So this is the composition of the Reclaim network, which is led by University of Surrey. And my colleague, Thomas Keltson, who's also in Renew at Bath, was representing this network from Bath. And of course, you also have Warwick, the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and Bangor University, and Charlotte, as ever, managing, being project officer and helping with Mark to manage the whole lot. Next slide, please. And this is the follow-on network, which is Green In, and you can see I'm listed there on the right-hand column, but once again led by Prashant at the University of Surrey, and it's a larger grouping of entities. So we've got University of Oxford, York, Surrey, obviously, Cranfield, the same UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, but also Janis Wenck, who was till recently at Bath and has now moved to Germany at BFG. So this is the newer network. Reclaim runs until February 2026. So all of these will be co-hosted by both these networks, these webinars till 2026, after which it'll be a largely Green In webinar series. So it's really, really nice to be part of this continuity process. Next slide, please. So the overall plan is for the webinars to run until October 2027. And these are run first Wednesday of every month, which is why you're here today. Lunchtime webinars, 12:30 to 1:30. And we always feature two speakers as we have today. And you can see all the previous recordings on our YouTube channel. And there's been a good amount of interaction via YouTube for this webinar series. Next, please. And here you can see the range of interests on the left-hand side. I know that the text is very small, so you mightn't be able to read everything, but it essentially covers from quite small aspects, sort of indoor climate, indoor quality, to all the way to outdoor considerations of green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, and all the rest of it. And the activities within the Reclaim network, which is around the outdoor environment, there have been 9 projects around urban green space and people, 7 synthesis studies and horizon scanning, 15 workshops, 9 secondments, and yeah, so this is the 42nd webinar, so it's many more than 25 at this point, and several engagement events, the last major one being in January of this year, photography competition, and a green, blue, and grey infrastructure database, which is in progress, and so on. So a huge amount of activity with 710 members actively engaging in a variety of these activities over this time period up until February 2026. So still a few months to go. Next slide, please. So you can get involved if you're interested in indoor greening or indeed in outdoor, given that Reclaim is still active. So I'm sure you can join Reclaim as well. But my main interest here is from the Green In Hat, which is the network I'm involved in. So there are workshops, one-day workshops being planned in line with a series of themes to do with air purification, monitoring, modeling, health and well-being, and then optimization and strategies. Each of these themes is also being likely to result in a review paper. So if you want to get involved in that, get in touch. You can also participate in our sandpits, where there is a small pot of money available to fund something like 3 projects of maybe 30,000 roughly each. And you can attend the sandpits, and you can also apply for the funding provided you're a member. And how do you become a member? It's dead easy. You just go to the website for Green In and sign up. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And the webinars, the one you're attending now, this is first Wednesday of every month, so I won't repeat that. But there are also going to be fellowships which are open to both academics and non-academics to support collaboration and knowledge exchange, and a series of other engagement events and knowledge sharing. Next, please. So with that, I'd like to quickly introduce our 2 speakers. We have Dr. Elgar Kamjou from University College Dublin, and she's going to be talking about what green infrastructure means for residents of informal settlements in Iran. And the second speaker today is Dr. Tatiana Armijos Moya, who's based at the Department of Architectural Engineering at TU Delft. And she'll be talking about green climate control, analyzing the impact of active plant-based systems on the built environment. So these are both topics I don't know a huge amount about, so I'm very, very excited to be here and to be hosting this webinar. So with that, I will pass on to Elgar to kick us off for the first talk. Thank you, Elgar.
Thank you so much for inviting me and also for the introduction. Should I share my screen first?
Yes, please.
And is everything okay? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's come up now.
Perfect. So I am going to present part of the work that I did during my PhD, but I'm mainly going to talk about the grounded work that I did, not just the theoretical part, because I believe that we all know about the theory part, so it might be better to have a little bit more perspective from the resident side. That's why I'm presenting today. So the pictures that you see throughout this presentation mainly are taken by myself when I was visiting the informal settlements in Iran. So this is to introduce what type of green infrastructure we are talking about in this context. So please pay attention to the pictures. So as I mentioned, the goal of this presentation is to reveal an understanding of green infrastructure benefits for residents of informal settlements through exploring their lived experiences. And before I jump into the work that I did in informal settlements, I want to mention that what green infrastructure meant in this study. Based on the literature, I decided that I will the main understanding of green infrastructure is an interconnected network of natural areas and open spaces that conserves ecosystem values and provides benefits for people and nature. Examples would be gardens, street trees, parks, rivers, green walls, pot planting, etc. There is a conceptual link between ecosystem services and green infrastructure. For example, provisioning has been seen as food and fuel, which also seen similarly in the green infrastructure, or for example, cultural services such as recreational and identity, also mentioned in green infrastructure development ideas. Looking into the literature, I realized that there is a context-insensitive understanding of green infrastructure when we are discussing planning or future development of green infrastructure in the global south. mainly because the topic was explored mainly in the global north and the realities of global south was never mentioned in understanding of or definition of the green infrastructure. So it is, on the other hand, green infrastructure is widely promoted as a win-win solution, which provides benefits for everyone. But when looking into the global south implementations of green infrastructure, we could obviously see green inequalities could emerge when greening projects happen. Specifically in MENA region, green infrastructure is overlooked and under-researched. But that's not the main topic that I want to explore because we know that looking into the literature is very obvious. Main thing that was the main question for me was that why green infrastructure, which has the potential to improve some of the environmental issues that informal settlements are facing, is often seen as a luxury and not an essential infrastructure. And I sense that this is mainly because we don't understand how residents value and use nature. That's why I decided to go with a grounded, bottom-up understanding of what green infrastructure means. So maybe someone asks why informal settlements? That's another question. I should mention that 20% of the world's urban population live in informal settlements, and we are facing with a huge population. They are heavily impacted by global environmental issues and natural disasters, and such as air pollution, flooding, and drought. And mainly because there's no evident planning system, they are not prepared. So they're much more vulnerable to these changes than a formal city. Addressing environmental issues and achieving inclusive urbanism remains an urgency and priority, specifically looking into international documents such as Sustainable Development Goals. Informal settlements are always coming up as a context that requires much more attention if we want to have sustainable world. While green infrastructure provides to be effective in cities and has the potential to address some of the issues that we are mentioning, such as flooding, drought, air pollution, it has often been neglected and in the planning theory and practice when it comes to informal settlements. So that's why this context is very important. I use the methodology, a mixed methodology, but such as like using document analysis and semi-structured interviews. I should mention that my methodology was much more complex and I had co-design sessions planned and focus groups planned, but because I was doing my PhD during COVID time, I had to be like just focused on semi-structured interviews. It didn't go bad, so I was able to do 64 interviews with national level authorities, regional level authorities, local level authorities, scholars, residents, and NGOs, and I applied thematic analysis. So the picture you're seeing in the right side of this slide of thematic analysis is just to show you that what happened behind the scenes when I was analyzing the interview codes. Although I used all the interviews in my thesis and the future, like the coming up publications, today in this presentation, I'm just going to focus on perspective of residents, such as everybody who is living in informal settlements, and mainly, and also including active people who in the society, such as people in women's empowerment groups, school-home linkage groups, health support groups, outdoor free sport groups, and religious meeting groups. Looking into the case study, I want to mention that Tehran has massively expanded in the past 30 years. So looking into this in these pictures from 1985 to 2009, and then today, we can see that how much of green spaces are consumed by the city expansion. And that left the city with a lot of environmental issues, such as heavy pollution, which we can actually see Tehran's name on the top of the list of the polluted cities almost every week, and occasional flooding. So what happened is that the municipality decided to go with some sort of environmental plans to, I think I have it in the next slide actually. Nope. Okay. So the municipality decided to go with environmental plans for Tehran to make this city a bit more resilient, and to do so, they decided to revitalize the valleys of Tehran, which are five valleys in Tehran, and to make them green spaces, public green spaces for people to use, and at the same time provide environmental benefits for the city. What happens as a result of that project is that informal settlements are outside of this planning system because they are kind of not visible in any section of the planning. And also, they are often facing displacement due to the implementation of greening projects, and being considered informal, their rights to their environment that often is developed by themselves. So these green valleys were not green. They made it green. So they're pushed away from this green valley for the benefit of the formal residents. So I focused on two case studies. One is called Farasad, the other one Amiriye. One is inside of the municipal border of Tehran, the other one is outside. By looking into these two informal settlements at the first view when I was visiting, this is my take on how they use green infrastructure. Like, for example, in the left bottom picture, they have greenways. They use water filtration to filter the water and use for irrigation. They have parks. They have flood controlling areas. And they have gardens. And I should mention that gardens in informal settlements of Iran is not equal to UK, Ireland gardens. So they are not backyards. There are orchards with fruit trees that the gardener actually uses them, sells the fruit, and their livelihood depends on this garden. They also have small agricultural land. So this is my take, so by just looking at the informal settlements. But then I talk to people and their perspective is much more diverse. So the first theme coming up was that they see social cultural benefits in green spaces. For example, many residents saw green spaces as part of their identity, memory, and everyday life. For example, Farasadi residents, they mentioned that their main last name in their neighborhood is Farasadi, and it comes from the link to the gardens in the Farasad Valley, which was really a big link to their identity. Many mentioned that green spaces provide relaxation, beauty, and belonging. For example, the picture that you see here is shown by one of the residents that I took the picture from their view, that how beautiful their neighborhood is. So they see the greenery as something pleasant. They also saw they believe that green spaces carry a religious and cultural meaning through community traditions. They mentioned that there is a specific donation type of land that they donate a land. It's called waqf in Islam. So they donate a land or green spaces for religious benefits and community benefits. And that was a practice in their neighborhood. So they were really proud of that too. The second theme coming up was, again, it's the follow-up of the social environmental benefits. For example, residents mentioned that parks offer recreational and escape from harsh conditions, and many mentioned that during the electricity outage that happens frequently in the warm seasons, they use parks as a refuge for, an environmental refuge, so they can actually go for a picnic or have their dinners outside of their homes and enjoy the cooler condition. Residents see infrastructure as essential for their daily comfort, and they mentioned that green areas improve air quality and provides them with blue sky. Comparing to what they see in Tehran, they were so proud of their blue sky, and they saw this as a value that even Tehrani residents, formal residents, don't have, but they do have this value in their neighborhood. The third theme was hazards mitigation. This was really important because many people mentioned that the green spaces can help controlling the flood and dust and heat. So they had a good understanding of this, the impact of environment in mitigation, in the environmental mitigation. For example, many mentioned that cutting trees is equal to flooding, and they mentioned that they do introduce canals and flood control areas into their neighborhood to come up with some sort of solutions. They also mentioned that a very specific event, that an earthquake happened in Tehran, and they were told to stay out of their homes because of the low quality of environment of the homes in informal settlements. And they only had 2 small parks, so they didn't know where to go. And I should mention that the fear of earthquake in Tehran is really real, and it is very challenging for people, and everybody is unconsciously waiting for this massive earthquake that is going to happen. So it is very affecting their mental health too. The fourth theme was economic benefits. As I mentioned before, gardeners use the gardens as source of food, income, and security. Green infrastructure supports their local livelihoods and markets, so they can sell their products and also buy products cheaper than the formal markets. That's why their livelihood is very much dependent on these gardens. But not everything was really just absolutely purely beneficial. They also mentioned some disbenefits and safety concerns. For example, parks could feel unsafe or exclusive to some people, especially women couldn't use the parks equally as men use, especially young women. In most of the informal settlements, drug use and as I mentioned, gender imbalance restrictions are very visible. And poor design creates social and health risks. For example, having just massively open space or bushy areas or very hidden, lack of lighting, these type of things mentioned a lot. So the planned green infrastructure, because of the insensitive design, were not really usable for informal residents. If I want to sum up, so I had 2 different informal settlements and they had different perspectives. Although they shared some, they had differences too. For example, Farahzad residents, because they had more link to gardens and their main occupation is gardening, they had more understanding of regional ecosystem services and biodiversity restorations. They even correctly criticized the planning system for biodiversity conservation, and they knew why these plans are not working. Both groups mentioned mental health, nostalgia, memories, and religious customs, hazard mitigation, but for example, land economics was a little bit more visible when I was talking to residents of Amiria. Air quality, temperature mitigation, and recreation was also mentioned equally and strongly by both residents. So if I want to categorize them to the type of ecosystems that we had, so for regulating services, they mentioned air quality, clean water, cooling effects, and temperature mitigation, flood control, sandstorm mitigation, and passive defense against earthquake. Supporting services was biodiversity conservation, and provisioning services, they mentioned food production, agricultural lands, foraging, and gardening. Cultural services such as recreational, visual qualities, nostalgia, relaxation, an enhanced sense of belonging, religious customs, and well-being and health were mentioned very often. Farzad residents also had different perspective towards these services. For example, their concern about addicts' presence in green spaces was bigger than the residents of Amiria. In Amiria, residents were mainly concerned with male dominance in the public green spaces. And because I'm very conscious of the time, I'm going to skip to the final slide. So if I want to conclude, while green infrastructure believed to be a non-priority concept in informal settlements, interviews with residents show that not only green infrastructure is necessary, in some cases it is a matter of survival for these residents. Being under the title of informal, defined by the planning system, so the planning system is calling them informal, makes it easier for the same planning system to neglect the benefit and necessity of green infrastructure for informal settlements and attempt to evacuate these areas for the benefit of the formal residents. This means that informal settlements are purely invisible to the planning system and therefore for the plans. If you are interested, this work is published in the Urban Forestry and Urban Greening journal, and the following, like the more theoretical parts are also published. They're all open access. If you're interested, please have a look. Thank you.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Elgar. A very, very insightful sort of analysis of resident perspectives, and the thematic analysis was very, very interesting to me, especially looking at some of the issues around safety and health, so that it actually disbenefits and benefits at the same time, and how this is negotiated because if it's an informal settlement. It's a question for Charlotte. Since Elgar is, I think, not going to be available during the Q&A session, I'm wondering if we should allow a few minutes now. I know there aren't any questions posted yet, but I just thought if we give people another 20 seconds or so to post questions if they want. Is that acceptable, Charlotte?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Please.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
if you, yeah, I think we could just take 2 or 3 minutes now, because I think it was such a thought-provoking presentation, and I think Elgar might enjoy a bit of reaction from the audience if there is any. I certainly really enjoyed the talk, and I'll be reading the paper in due course. One of the questions, since we're still waiting for questions, one of the questions in my mind was around, you talked about the sort of cultural and religious significance and the Waqf process, where, I mean, I'm not religious, so I don't quite understand all the sort of technicalities of it. So is it the case that some of these areas where the green infrastructure now exists has come about because of people? I mean, my understanding of the Waqf is you're donating your assets to society as a sort of act of goodwill and a sort of contribution to society in general. So is that what's happened, and that's how some of this has been enabled?
So that's one aspect, but also there was another perspective that I talked about that in one of the papers, actually, that because these areas are informal, that's one way to make it formal, because they are registered in one of the institutes that is formalizing lands. So and when you are doing this Waqf donation, you still have the title to the land to work on the land as long as you live. So basically you donate for after you're gone, or you can actually have these conditions that, the 3 generations after me could work on this land, and their livelihood could come from this land, and they donate partially of the income, for example. So it is very loose concept. So some people think that informal residents are using this as a way, flexible way to enter. But I personally don't believe in that, because this Waqf has been around for many years. So we do have documents of Waqf that goes back to 500 years ago. So I don't think this is the main narrative, I would say.
Brilliant. Okay, so there's a lovely comment there from Joanne. I'm happy to read it out. It says it's very insightful and happily surprising to learn that informal residents understand and can explain the green infrastructure benefits. Yes, I was struck by that. So I think it was not in Amirie, it was in the other place, where Farah said. So that was quite amazing that they actually were able to comment on it. And it was, so surprising to learn that the residents are making canals to reduce stormwater impacts, as well as food growing and foraging. So thank you for your research and presentation. So unless you want to quickly address whether the canals are being made for stormwater impacts or not, and then maybe you can let you go because there are no other questions.
Yeah. So the canals actually, they were originally, initially developed for irrigation purposes, because the valley is very is not flat. It is very hilly part of this area. So they use a system to basically step by step bring the water to the top elevations, which is very brilliant. I have never seen such a thing, but over the years, because they have seen floods before, and they saw that these canals are very effective, they learned the way that they can actually add conservants and some sort of I would say small lakes behind these canals to have like the overflow, to collect the overflow of the water. And they did this like in the places that floods happened before, like by experience only. So but it is very effective, and it has been, and they did have like a good understanding of what is causing the flood and how they should, clean up the sides of the river, and they had a calendar for themselves. So they are very, very involved, and they are very connected with the nature.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank
More
you.
formally, Elgar, that was very, very lovely presentation, very thought-provoking, and hopefully everyone will read the papers, myself included, after your talk. So could I
Thank
just
you so
request?
much.
Pleasure. Could I just request anybody else wanting to put any thoughts or comments, even if it's a comment, maybe it's better in the Q&A rather than the comments, sorry, in the chat channel, please. If you could stick to that, that would really help manage the process. All right, so we now move on to our next speaker. Are you there, Tatiana? Yes, Tatiana is there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Sukumar.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Elgar. I actually had a question for Elgar. Maybe can I just
Okay,
Yeah.
you're stealing time from your own presentation, but yes, go for it. I'll give you 1 minute.
Okay. No, I was really grateful that you presented this perspective of the greenery in the global south. I think it's so meaningful to understand the difference between the north and the south. But I was wondering if the Iran government is taking any action of implementing natural-based solutions within the future policies in general.
Natural waste solution you mentioned.
Yeah, nature-based
Nature-based
solutions.
Oh,
solutions.
nature-based solutions, sorry. So the terminology is a little bit different, but they are doing like for example, what we are calling nature-based solutions and green infrastructure is called let me just think, natural network in development plans of Iran. So terminology is different, but the concept is very similar. So they do have like I wish I could actually share one picture, but they do have they defined a plan for Tehran to revitalizing the 5 main valleys of Tehran that were used to be rivers, but now are covered by highways. So to revitalize that, just to face with the environmental issues. But how much it has been successful, I would say we need to look into that. But the plan is there. So.
Okay, great to hear. Thank you, Elgar.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Tatiana, for your question. And looks like you're ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready for you. Carry on.
Super. So thank you very much for the invitation. I was really looking forward for this day to present a little bit of my research. So I'm Tatiana Armijos Moya. Currently, I am a researcher at the Faculty of Architecture and the Built Environment at TU Delft in the Department of Architectural Engineering and Technology, where I developed my PhD, actually. So today I'm going to present the green climate control system that I have developed, which is basically analyzing the impact of as I call active plant-based system in the built environment. So within this research was what I was aiming to answer was basically if can plant-based system improve the environmental quality in the built environment, and if so, how? Is a big question, and I will try to give you some answers during this day. Yeah. So, as also Elgar presented before, there are so many benefits about having plants, indoor and outdoor. As human beings, we have this instinct to be close to nature, so we are always going to try to go towards nature and be connected to nature in any way. So this psychological effect to be next to greenery or be in contact with greenery is always very important psychologically. And it has been several studies that also says that we have it helps to reduce the sick building syndrome, as you might know. There are also these part that improves the social and cultural benefits that having plants next to us, as well as have been very well documented. But within this PhD, I wanted to go to the physical, actually how to measure these benefits. So I will present today how actually measure some of these benefits and maybe see if we actually plants improve the indoor built environment and how. So as every system plant, in order to work perfectly, needs some setup that we need to take here into account in order to make a happy system. So if we talk about indoor plants, there are some things that we have to take into account. That is the correct lighting, the correct relative humidity, the correct temperature. As you might know, for example, as you can see here, plants have a different weight that they catch the light. So it's important to have the proper light. And as you saw in my cover page at the beginning, I have this purple light that we call it here the growing light. So if you have plants indoor and you wanted to have healthier plants and you don't have a very good window next to it, maybe you could consider having these growing plants. So in order to have like a system that works properly, it's important to have all this consideration into account. So you will see that during this presentation, the selection of the key elements is going to be fundamental in order to have like an effective system. Another important thing to take into account for a happy system is actually to have a proper growth medium. There are certain characteristics of the growth medium. Normally, you will hear that soil is a good medium, the plant will grow healthier and will have all these elements that they need in order to grow and to keep, like, you know, all the benefits that we want to take from the green system. I'm not going to go into the details, but I think it's important that you consider this, because at the end you will see that growth medium is fundamental in terms of how to improve especially the air quality and also the thermal quality within the environment surrounded by the plants. Also, for this specific study, I wanted to actually develop a system that is not going to be like just potted plant, but basically is going to be a green wall system. And as you can see here, there are several ways that you can implement this green system into the vertical elements. And for this specific study, I chose the living wall system that is going to be placed in potted plants. And I will show you why this is actually the most important, the best system in this specific case. So one of the things, it went super fast. Okay, one of the things I'm going to take now is about the thermal benefit of having green systems in the built environment. I conducted first this study in a greenhouse, actually, because I created this small prototype that is connected with plants that were well known to have known to be used indoors, that are connected with a fan system that actually improves the movement of the water from the bottom part, as you can see here. So the aim of this prototype is actually to measure what is to have like a plant-based system in a hot, humid climate. While measuring and developing a mathematical model, we could see actually to have this kind of system works really well in hot, dry climates, because the green wall is what is going to do is to drop the temperature down, and also is going to increase the temperature, the humidity, sorry. So as you can see here, to having this kind of system, a hot and dry environment is going to be very, very very good for the thermal quality. As Elgar also mentioned it, that also in the parks that you visited, actually makes sense that you have greenery, and also the environment around these plants is going to be actually much better. I don't know if you have visited Alhambra as well. They use this kind of concepts when you can use plants and water to actually improve the environmental quality of hot and dry climate conditions. So that is one of the things that you could say, that actually analyzing the context where your system is going to be placed, the kind of plant you're going to be used, the kind of substrate you're going to use, is also a very big effect on the actually effect that your system is going to have. So yeah, basically this is the part of the thermal environmental quality that is going to be improved. So in order to establish how actually, how significant is this benefit, I developed a mathematical model to establish that, okay, this, I use this mathematical model was developed by the Penman-Monnet evaporation from the FAO 56. So then we can account actually this kind of system works perfectly in hot, dry climate conditions in terms of environmental quality. So as you can see here, we have the proper setting for the plant-based system, the proper plant-based system, and then we actually create like a more chill environment, but a little bit more humidity. So you have to be aware that all the things that this system that you are introducing within the environment is going to produce within the built environment itself. Talking about indoor air quality, there are the big question is actually plants can improve the indoor air quality, and if yes, how? There have been several studies starting from the NASA in the 50s that they make a big list of how plants actually improve the air quality. They make like a big list of plants that how they behave with different kind of pollutants. So what we have discovered, and also through the years, what we have discovered is actually plants actually indeed help to improve the indoor air quality in different pathways. So we have, first of all, from the stomata, there are some plants that have like high stomatal conductance, meaning that they open and close their stomata more often during the day. So they might be more proper to help to reduce the pollutants that are from gaseous pollutants. And also, as you can see here, also the rhizosphere. So all the rooting area also have like a lot of very big impact in the improvement of the indoor air quality from different reasons. For, as you can see here, there are different ways that actually the plant and the root environment actually can absorb all the pollutants. It can be that basically they absorb the pollutant all by the stomata, or also it can be sometimes, I would call it the rhizosphere. So all the soil around the root area also help a lot to actually digest this pollutant in different ways. If we talk about like particular matter pollutants, for example, there are some pollutants that are going to be attached to the leaves, and then the plant absorb and digest this pollutant in a different way. So you have to understand very well which is the plant that you are going to choose in order to have which benefit. So that's why I mentioned at the very beginning that the selection of the elements are going to be very key. So in order to understand that the plants that are selected are the right ones for this prototype and to understand how to improve the indoor air quality, I was 6 months in conducting experiments in a university in Wageningen in the plant research group, where basically I used their setup to measure, I used formaldehyde as a gas as an example to understand actually how plants behave with this pollutant specifically. Maybe, I don't know if you're familiar, but formaldehyde is a pollutant that we can find in almost every household. It's for cleaning products, it's for glues that we use in our materials. So it's a pollutant that we are surrounded all the time. So that's why I chose this specific pollutant in order to showcase actually which is the behavior of the plant if we're surrounded by this pollutant. So during the test, I was several tests during these 6 months. So what I wanted to show you here is, first of all, I developed, I had to test the setup. So as you can see here is the zero measurement of the setup. So you can see when I injected the formaldehyde in the setup itself, this is the natural decay of the pollutant. But when you introduce soil, in this case, for example, you can see that the soil absorbs the pollutant almost immediately and disappeared during the testing period almost immediately, and it did not come out. So that is actually, we could see that how soil and how the growth medium, as I mentioned before, is really fundamental in this absorption of the pollutant itself. In the case of the plants, we can also see that the natural decay is here of the pollutant without any plant inside. But when we introduce the plant, even though it doesn't reach just the 0%, just the plant itself also absorbs a lot of the formaldehyde itself. So what we can see here is actually the plant, as you can see, actually help to absorb most of the pollutant around the plant itself. The soil makes a very big impact as well in the absorption of the gas pollutant. So together is the best combination in order to make an impact in the air quality. But as I mentioned before, within these two plants, I also want to understand actually which is the behavior in this stomatal conductance. So meaning how much they absorb from the air. So as you can see here is basically with the CO2 level that was present in the setup. All the plants need CO2 in order to grow. happy and healthy. But here in one point, the CO2 level was absorbed super fast by the fern. So it was reaching basically an unhealthy place. So I have to inject more CO2, meaning that the stomatal conductance of the fern is even higher. So it means that this plant exchange more gases from the plant in and out. So we can see that this is more effective in terms of absorbing gaseous pollutants. It's not that the peace lily was not, but this was just, let's say, more effective. So once all the tests were conducted, I did several, I tested different kind of substrates. Within that, it was soil, activated carbon, and expanded clay as kind of substrate. And from the plants, I tested the peace lily and the fern, as I mentioned before. It seems more effective that the formaldehyde was absorbed equally by both of these plants, and it was even better absorbed by the wet soil. So within all the setups I put it within this experiment, wet soil was the best. But we don't want to remove this effect of the greenery, so then we have to make the best combination for your prototype later on. So as I mentioned before, the selection of the materials is key. So Boston fern was the plant that was selected, but instead of the soil, it was chose to do the expanded clay. And I want to explain you why. So the idea of this prototype is to create an active plant-based system. So as you can see here, it was introduced a fan in every kind of the pot in order to accelerate this process of absorption of the pollutants from the air and actually really force the air to go through the plant, through the roots, and not let it go by just by itself. So really force the air to go through the system. So if we use soil instead of expanded clay, means that the level of energy that you need to do in order to push the air from the system is going to be really high. So in this case, it was chose the expanded clay that was a really good growth medium, also give very good benefits in the absorption of the pollutant, and at the same, it gives the space to actually absorb the air and help this biofiltration system, this active biofiltration system. So here's how it works. The air is actually being forced to go through the plant, but also through the root medium. As I mentioned before, that is really important in terms of indoor air quality. And this was placed in a wall that was later on also tested in a lab. What I wanted to mention before about this selection of the materials is like every material also emits pollutants. So it's very important that within the materials that you choose in order to make your prototype, you select also materials that don't emit a lot of pollutants. So because otherwise you don't make any effect in the improvement of the indoor air quality. So I built up a wall with these biofiltration systems, and this was placed. We have a lab that we call the Sense Lab here at the TU Delft. So basically, what we in this Sense Lab, what we can control is all the setups in terms of ventilation, in terms of amount of quality, air quality inside, the lighting. So we tested different kind of situations. And I choose these two rooms that are exactly the same rooms. They are built with materials that they don't emit any kind of pollutant either. And then I did a blind test where one room was furnished with a new carpet together with the green system, and the other one just with the carpet, and to evaluate the acceptability, the intents, and the preference of all the people that tested this experiment. So as you can see here, the level of acceptability is slightly higher in the room without plants. They measure also a less intense, and the preference is slightly higher also than the one of plants. So what we conclude with this experiment was basically that people is not used to the kind of smells that come out of the green system. They recognize that was an earthy smell coming out of it. But in the level of the brain, how it works, we mentioned this place is going to have materials that you could find in an office. And for the people evaluating this setup, it was clear that this earthy smell was not part of the office environment. So my big conclusion also from here is, even though, as you can see here, the air supply comes from the bottom up, so it was actually going through the plant system and going out directly to the fan, to the funnel, where people could actually test and smell what was coming out of the room. So it's basically of the location, even though helps that the air goes exactly through the green wall, but at the same time it is really connected from, like, the smell comes directly from the plant-based system to the person itself. So it's also a matter of how we located the system also makes a big effect of actually how effective the system is. So we know that it's effective reducing the air pollutants. We know that it's effective improving the thermal quality depending on the surrounding environment. But also it's important that we don't ruin the psychological effect or this extra effect, creating more problems introducing this green system in the indoor built environment. So at the end, the conclusion is, like, I have these two assessments, which is basically, as I mentioned before, the level of intensity and acceptability in these two rooms, how they was measured. Slightly higher acceptable in the room without the plants, and slightly less intense in the room without plants. But comparing these different assessments from the physical and chemical effect, that we know that actually plants improve the thermal environmental quality, improve the indoor air quality. We also need to design in a way that we don't create more problems as well within the built environment. So at the end, can plant-based system improve the environmental quality? Yes, they can, but it's how we design with the plants. So is it clear that in order to improve indoor air quality, mechanical system is important to be introduced? Otherwise, the plant itself is going to be just very minimal effect just in the surrounding of the plant. But we wanted to make a big effect in a big room. It's important that we force the air to go through this system, and also to place it in a way that we don't create more problems with the users, with the people using the space. Okay, that's for me. So thank you very much for the invitation, and if you have any questions, just please let me know.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That was another fantastic talk. So thank you, Tatiana, for keeping up the energy levels for the webinar to such an extent, and following up from Elgar. So some questions have come in, although one of them I note is yours. So you've got to ask that to Elgar already.
Yeah.
And then I think Ritik's question was also posted at the time of Elgar's, but it might be more relevant to you. But I think in a way you might have already answered it. So if you want to just give a brief comment to Ritik's question, which is, plants are used as intervention to improve indoor air quality. Is there any disadvantage of this intervention?
Definitely. I always say, I will recommend that, for example, when we talk about indoor air quality, plants with flowers are less desirable because of the photosynthesis part that the plants go through. So they create more spores, more pollen indoors. So people might be more sensitive of this, even though they are beautiful, and for some specific parts, of course, you could take it in a personal level control. But talking about like a big room, I would say there are some things that we need to take into account, like plants that they don't have like a lot of spores, that they don't have like a lot of, that the photosynthesis doesn't create like a lot of problems. We need to maintain the system as well. So as every system, it has their pros and cons.
Brilliant. Okay, and you got a very congratulatory message from Elgar a few minutes ago. She's really, really happy for you to have shared your work, and she really likes your methods and experimental design. So that's a little pat on the back from your co-speaker today. My question, I'll just keep an eye on the Q&A channels if more come along. My question was around this active part of the system that you've got here. So it's obviously a forced air system. You've got these fans sitting at the base of the thing, drawing or pulling air from across the top of the plant through the activated the soil replacement thingy. I've forgotten what it's called. So there must be an energy cost we're paying for this. Have you done any work looking at whether the environmental cost of that energy versus the sort of gains? Is there, I'm guessing, I don't know what the fans, I couldn't read it, was very small. I know that you've looked at the fan power, But if you want to put some comment to that, it'd be really great. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, that is a great question. No, actually, didn't do like the environmental cost of actually having these funds. Why I wanted to incorporate this fund is basically to understand how the biofiltration, active biofiltration system works, because there are a lot of like myths about plants, especially in the indoor environment. In the outdoor environment, I would say because of the quantity of plants you have is massively, then actually it makes a bigger effect. I calculated though that with my setup that in order to have like to improve the indoor air quality of a room, you need 42 plants per square meter to actually have a clean air environment. So you cannot have, basically it's a forest, an indoor forest. So the solution to make an effective system, it was to force the air. So I wanted to force first. Mechanical ventilation was incorporated, but it's a big question. Is it sustainable? Then the system, is it going to create more energy costs? And how much, because the idea will be in my next step of evaluation, you would ask me, I will introduce this connected to the ventilation system of the room itself to see actually how much is reduced. So then you can actually see how effective or not effective is this system. So the answer is yes, it will make an effect. How much? I'm not sure yet.
Lovely. Yeah, so that was my sort of going to be follow up. So you've already answered that, which is the next step seems to be if you've got low energy buildings, which are often now mechanically ventilated rather than naturally ventilated for heat recovery purposes, there is already an element of forced air displacement through the spaces. And maybe there is a way in which the plant active part of the plant system is tied to the active mechanical ventilation of the building rather than being tied. But obviously for experimental purposes, this is this was the right way to set it up. Otherwise you wouldn't get this. The other interesting thing is, the outcome. I mean, I know it was, as you said, it was a very slight effect. That the one with the plants was less preferred than the one without the plants. And I sorry, I was trying to keep pace with you. I think you said that was a result of you separating the olfactory system from the visual system, right? So the human participant, you're essentially exposing them just to the smell side of it, if you like, and then they didn't know what they were seeing. So that positive association, I think you've said this, so sorry if I'm repeating, but I think that positive association, is there another experiment where you've done this with the positive association?
With the plant itself?
Yeah, where they can see that it's the plant that's producing that effect.
Yeah, no, because I was sure, because it's based on in purpose. I didn't want to see, because I already knew, because even if you see the plant system itself was beautiful and greener and happier. So then if you said, okay, if you have to be, so the question was like, if you have to sit in this working place for more than 5 hours, please answer to this question. And I knew already, if you will be and be next to a green wall, is going to be for sure the green wall. I didn't do it because I already knew, but yeah, what I would like to do is maybe later on again recreate it, and maybe with more time to evaluate in longer period of time. Because at the end, I want to remove the psychological effect that I knew that is going to be positive already, and I try to make it as as factual as possible, just to see how people perceive. Actually, within the Sense Lab, we did several experiments of testing different construction materials in that way, because it's actually, there are protocols that, the new materials also go through this kind of experiments, that people have to understand the acceptability of these new materials in the market. So I follow the same protocol in this one to understand how people perceive my prototype. And as you could see, it was slightly less, but my hypothesis is, because you said it was an office environment, then they think, okay, the chemical smell is even better than the earthy smell. So yeah, that is my hypothesis.
So there's actually a question from Soto Parejas, but I'll before I ask that question, I just want to have a follow-up, which is, it would be very interesting to me to see a manipulation where you actually show them a green room, but the air is actually piped from the non-green room, and they don't know that it's actually being crossed, and then to see whether the visual effect is still strong.
Yeah,
So
true.
because you got so there's some interesting permutations, combinations you can do with the sort of regular one and a manipulated one, which will actually reveal something very interesting. But anyway, I don't want to take up all the time. So Soto's question is, he says it's very interesting, Tatiana, and in his research on stomatal density and size, he's found that developing a biodiverse indoor system with aerial plants and working with non-vascular flowerless species such as bryophytes could provide an effective approach to studying particle avoidance mechanisms while minimizing flowering and soil-related variables such as organic particles, mold spores, or bacteria. And so he's curious about how this system could work as an active system. It's a long question, so I hope you got all of that.
I would say, first of all, I would like to know if the plan that because I don't remember which is the plan that he mentioned, but for sure, like every plan has this effect of reducing certain kind of gases around them. As you could see between the peace lily and the Boston fern already was an effect. And I'm curious actually how this plan is in comparison to all these other plans to understand how effective is this stomatal conductance, because in this specific case of gaseous pollutant makes a very big effect. And then the problem with not having like a growth system is like we reduce first of all this part of, as I show you in my experiment, that also the growth system makes a very big effect. And the plan itself is mainly to incorporate maybe these specific plants in a way that is incorporated to a ventilation system, maybe more in the room level, that actually is connected when you see where is the air velocity going through, and then actually you try to face this system where the actual air velocity goes, so in the same direction. So you in a way are forcing the air to go through the plant system.
Absolutely. Okay, so Charlotte just reminded us that we've run out of time, but since Abidemi has put a question in, I will quickly ask you to respond to that in 30 seconds. His question is, how can we keep an indoor plant alive in a retrofit home that is airtight?
As long as you have, because there are different requirements of lighting, as long as you have like the proper watering of the plant, and if you have like a window, it's fine. If you don't have a window, you have a growing light. There is a big research program here about for the greenhouses. So we know that actually plants can grow without the big windows if you have the proper growing light and you create the right conditions. So air tightness is not a problem. If it's very dry, you create you give a little more of water of your plant. If it's a green system, like in a wall level, then you need like a more a strategic way of watering the plant.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, Tatiana. I do get the sense that I'd have to invite you to my office and bless my plants, which I've managed to kill serially over the COVID period. It sounds like you have a very, very green thumb. So with that, I just want to finish for today. Thank you to both our speakers. Our next webinar, which is on 3rd December, is Dr. Ian Sinner, who's a respiratory consultant at Alder Hey Children's Hospital, and he's going to be talking about indoor environments and children's health. So again, very closely linked to some of the things we've heard today, especially from you, Tatiana. And then Jens Thomas, who's based at Farm Urban, and he's going to be talking about vertical farming and the urban environment. So once again, we have indoor and outdoor talking sort of at the same time, really setting both these networks into play. So thank you once again for joining the webinar. If you go to these websites, which is reclaim-network.org or greenin, which is one word, .uk, and you can then go and join both these networks. They're completely free, and you get to participate in all the calls for funding or papers or whatever it is that we are doing. So you get all the notifications. And with that, I'd like to call the webinar to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.